Hello everyone, welcome to this game dev Q&A. I'm gonna take the stream chat and pop it on the screen right around here so we have it. Here's the pop-out chat, put it here maybe. Yeah, perfect. So it's a week since I released my first indie game, Cat and Onion. It's released currently on itch.io and you can buy it. There's a link in this video description. And it's also gonna come out on Steam, you know, sometime in Q1 essentially. But you know, I did a release live stream. I was very stressed, it was very chaotic. I tried to answer some questions, but it was very chaotic. Now everything is nice and calm. So I'm gonna try to do a little Q&A session. And I will already have 2 questions in the chat, so that's great. And I am having tea in my brand new Cat and Onion mug that my girlfriend gave me as a shipping present. Yeah. I got sick just after launching the game, so I've been sick for a week, so it's still a bit like that, but I'm better now. There might be the other person in the room is a bit sick, so there might be some coughing in the background, but you have to, that's just how it is. Anyways, let's look at the first questions from the chat. So Tiny Big Games is asking, how did you build that single exe? So what this means is that when you download the game on Windows or on any OS really, it's just a single executable. That's like 50 megabytes, you run it. And the second part of the question is like, how did you build that single exe? Is Raylib static and all your data is embedded as RTRC data type? So there's 2 things to it. Yes, Raylib is statically linked, so you know, when you have a program you can have lots of DLLs next to your program, or you can, inside the exe you can put in the DLLs and then your exe becomes bigger, but all the things are inside. So Raylib is statically linked, that's one thing, so there's no need for any external library. Oh, the mug, wait here, it's just a waterfall from the game and the cat. So the Raylib is statically linked, and then in Odin there is a nice feature. I will pull out Sublime here and show you some. This will go right into some nice code here, you know. That's good. I have a thing called an asset builder. Well, we can look at it like this actually. In my game, all my assets, there's a when switch in the code here. So this is like, if this compilation flag embed assets is true, then it runs this code, and if it's not true, then it runs this code down here. So when embed assets is true, then this is a list. This defines all the assets in the game. And if you look to the end of each line here, so this is the main cat running animation. But if you look at the end of this line, it says data equals load texture/cat.png. What this does is that during compile time, this is an Odin thingy. During compile time, it takes the file at that position and pulls it into the data of the exe, and then makes it into some kind of byte array that is, you know, static inside the program and you can use. So the data will point to a array of stuff that is fine throughout the whole execution of the program. So that happens when embed assets is true, which happens when I make the release exe. When I'm working in a development build in my editor and stuff, then I want hot reload of the textures and stuff and sounds. So then I don't do this. This is only for the shipping. So the data is here, and then it just knows when it's gonna load a texture later in like asset manage, asset storage here. When it goes to load texture here, no, not this one. Yeah, it actually loads all textures on boot since they're also small. So when we init all the assets, then it's just like, okay, are we embedding assets? Then we load them from memory or we load them from texture. And the memory takes the data plop on each texture. So it goes through all these assets. This game is tiny, so it can load all the textures when it starts. It doesn't need to pull stuff in and out of memory and stuff. That's fine. So that's sort of those two things, statically linked Raylib plus this. Then you have your, and this one doesn't just do textures. If you look down here, you also have these, here are the fonts, here are the shaders, here are, now I'm moving some code, here are the sounds. Yeah. So that's how you get a 50 megabyte exe, sort of in the style of, I looked at Undertale, which is made in Game Maker. So it's sort of where it comes from. So thank you for that question. Sri Jan Paul asks, how long have you been doing pixel art? Hard to say. So I had never really animated before this game, and so I mean I did start this game sort of in March last year, but I didn't start working full time on it until September last year. So I'm gonna drink a bit of tea before my voice fails, before anything has happened at all. From my cat and onion mug. So like I said, I've been sick for just after the release, so too much sitting up late and making games. But yeah, doing pixel art. So I hadn't made any animations before this game. So my first, I can show. Oh, I have a. This is as usual gonna be me being like, oh, this and that. I made a Twitter thread the other day, and that one actually contains an example of blah 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 blah. Twitter here. So this is the first how my game looked. I made when I was flying home from GDC last year in March. I made this on the way home, so I wanted to try Odin Lang and Raylib, and I made this program. So it's just a cat that can run, and this is the animation I made. So it's a bit. The new animation of the cat running is a bit better, as you can see. And I have this whole thread on Twitter. I can link it with all the progress on that. But pixel art in general, I did a few sort of still images many years ago, but I haven't been at it really. I'm not. The main two things I've done a tiny bit of pixel art, some kind of. Like scenes, more like top down, just like a few cute things here and there, but not that many pictures. And then I've also done oil painting a bit. So, like Bob Ross style oil painting has been a thing I've looked dabbing in. Is that what you say? Dabbling. I'm gonna use the word dabbling for when you do things now. So hope that answers that. And then Srijan also asks, going by revenue your game has made so far, how hopeful are you about indie games full time? It's hard to say. I have to see the Steam release first, because you can make 100 times or more on Steam than on itch. Itch has it's sold sort of what I expected, but itch is not. It's more of a way to get going sort of. I didn't expect super good sales on there, so it's hard to say. What I can say is that about doing indie games full time. I've actually been doing this full time since September because I've just been living off some savings. So we'll see how if the Steam release goes slightly okay, like if it goes 10 times better than the this release, then at least maybe I can make another tiny game, and hopefully that one, we'll see how the things turn out. So Shiner asks, what are your plans now? I am gonna release on Steam in Q1, which is we're currently in Q1, but maybe it's in the beginning of March, maybe it depends a bit. On Steam you want a bit of a few wish lists before you push the button. I have like 200 wishlist now for the game, which is actually better than I hoped. It's been out not that long, the Steam page, so that's fun. So hopefully I can release it. I'm not gonna go for the, you know, people say like, oh, you need to have 7,000 wishlist. I'm not gonna go for that. Maybe if it hits 1.5 or something, I don't know, around there, maybe then I'll be happy and just press the button. But I'm also making I just released a patch today on itch, so that's like the first update. But I will also make another patch that will be the, you know, the initial version that goes on Steam, that just fixes a few tiny things in the game. It's just, there is like 2 gameplay things that I have realized that are messed up that I need to fix. One of them is that you can in the game, early in the game, you need to talk to a character to kind of get the backstory and what you're supposed to do. You can also just run away and just do all the things without getting the backstory, but then you will sort of trigger an event, so you go back to this person finally to do the story, and then he has skipped lots of dialogue, so it all becomes very, very confusing. So I'm gonna try to fix that by adding a tiny little extra gameplay element that kind of ties it all together. So some stuff like that. And also I want to improve the tutorial slightly, because many people say that the initial thing when you need to learn to pick up stuff and use stuff and everything at once is a bit too many things at once. So I will split the tutorial in sort of 2 sections. That's sort of the main things I want to do for the Steam release, and also add a few sound effects, maybe a tiny bit extra music, we'll see. I also been thinking of localization, but that we will see. I will just see if I can adapt the game code to do localization. Like I will spend 2 days on it maybe, and if it feels like too much work, then I will unfortunately skip it, because it's not something I did plan for initially. Yeah, and yeah, welcome anyone who joined a bit later. I just made and released this game, Cat and Onion, and you can buy it on itch if you want to, and you can also wishlist it on Steam, and there's some links in this video description, in this live stream description. Here's the little trailer running, and here's my itch page and stuff. So I'm just doing like a Q&A of like anything game dev. It can be whatever you want. Tiny Big Games asks, how did you make the levels? Custom or tiled or LDTK? And Srijan already has said he uses a custom level editor, and that is correct. I can probably throw up I need to finish that sentence. I can get up my game here, and I just need to mute it, I realize, because it will be chaos here with all these. Now it's like, oh, all the sounds at the same time. Cat and Onion. Yeah, there, I muted it. Here's the game. And if I press new game, and I have some debug keys here to kind of get around, then I have a little level editor here. So I press F2 at any time, and then I can go around like this, and I can place tiles and stuff, and you know, and I also have some kind of entity mode where I can place stuff such as this rocket thing here, and yeah. So and there's also some you can edit properties and stuff, and there's some special stuff like splines also. You can put out a spline and zoom in and edit the path of it, and do like splines like this, and then you can make things animate along the splines. If you play the game, you've seen the splines. Like the rocket uses these splines a lot to kind of go around in nice scripted paths and stuff. The entities themselves, most of them I define in code. So there's code that both defines which entities exist and how they work. But then you place them from the editor. So that's the editor. And I just started on doing my own because my professional background is in video game tools. So it's just something that comes naturally, like, oh, I need a level editor, I just make one, because it's something I'm so used to that it doesn't sound daunting to me. But maybe I should try to use LDTK or something sometime, just to, you know, save some time. Anyways, let's see. And Jon, hello Jon, he says that he has a bug report. Oh, let's do a live bug report. I played with my son, 9 years old. He had problems with the hitbox that you need to face the object. You have passed the If you have passed the object, you cannot easily turn around. It's because you can't talk to people when you're back. Yeah, you have to sort of stand in front of them and look at them. And if you are behind them, sort of, then it tries to I can actually look at it for a Steam release, because I have realized I have had my brother had his kids play it, and the kids liked it because the game is, to be, you know, put it simply, quite silly. Like it has many, it is, you know, it does many different things. It's a little, some people say that you shouldn't do drugs and play this game, but then also some people, because it's a bit trippy almost, but some kids just like, you know, the chaotic vibes of it, that you go around with your baseball bat and hit try to solve problems, and you use butter to slide through walls, but it's also sort of non-violent in a way. The only violence is that you hit things with a baseball bat, but it's kind of in a comedic way. So I think parents like it, and I had some other people who played it with their kids, and the kids seem to like it. So I would like to make it accessible for kids. Your kid's mind was blown. That's nice. One thing I really try to do for this game is to from when you start the game, the player character is on the screen the entire game. It never leaves the screen, essentially. But it does lots of very trippy level transitions where the camera kind of moves into places, and when it is in a perfect blessed position, it sort of changes level, and that level starts in also a perfect blessed position, so you don't notice that switch. There's a few tiny glitches still left. In the patch I released today, I fixed almost all of them. There's 2 tiny level switch glitches that I'm gonna fix for the Steam release, that you can try to find if you want. So I'm pretty happy with how smooth the whole, like, it doesn't feel like there's separate levels. Tiny Big Games, as it's a follow-up about the level editor. If it's immediate mode UI for the UI. Yes, but here we have to be careful what we say, because when people say EM GUI, sometimes people mean their EM GUI, which is just an implementation of. Now I sound like a. Well, actually, but no. So what I wanted to say here is that I use an immediate mode graphic user interface, but I use my own implementation. So on top of Raylib, I've just built this UI thing, which looks like this, and it has UI IDs, and it knows what it's hovering and what was clicked, and then I have a file of editor GUI controls where you can do like int field, vec2 field, and I've implemented these. You know, this is, well, I don't know how big is this file. 900 lines plus the UI file is 120 lines. Plus there might be some controls defined in the editor files, but you know, that's almost all of the EM immediate mode UI I use. So it's not more than that. So if you don't like using, for example, off-the-shelf solutions like their EM GUI, you can just make your own. It's not the most amount of code. It's not a huge amount of code. And also, especially if you make a game yourself, if you make a game for someone else, then it becomes more code, because you need to be like, I need to support keyboard focus, tabbing around between controls. I just implemented the things I need. I don't spend that much time inside my editor. So I've been able to cut corners. If you were supposed to make this like production ready, be possible to hand to designers to kind of, you know, do without getting them angry, then it's probably, you know, 3 or 4 times the code. Then maybe you should use their EM GUI instead. Jon says that his kid said, I think it's about the transition. What? How come we are here now? This game is weird. I love it. That's sort of what I was going for with the transitions of the game. But I hope it still is like you come there and it's a smooth transition, but it's like it's not where you expected to end up. But it sort of was clear that it's clear how you got there, kind of, because there was never a cut in the camera. But it's not what you expected. I hope that's how people feel about it when they play it. So, like I said, anyone who joins this, you're free to ask any kind of game dev questions. It can be about programming, pixel art, marketing, shipping on platforms, or Odin Lang things, because that's the programming language I use. It can be about Raylib, which is the graphics library I used, anything like that. Making sounds or making music also, it's fine. Tiny Big Games asks, Odin, what tooling? Do you do the edit command line build, or can you build debug for whatever editor IDE you use? Lots of people use Visual Studio Code with Odin, and then they set up a little script that builds with the compiler, and then they have a regex or something that can pull out the error, so you can press next error and you can do all that, and then you can debug from in there. That's what many people do. That's not what I do. I use Sublime, and I have this. I press the build button and I get a menu here where I can build a game, I can build and run and stuff. And this is just a Sublime tool, build tool setup. But these essentially just run the Odin compiler, like the build.bat. This one. First it builds uses the asset builder, which the asset builder is a separate Odin program that builds the assets.odin file, which I showed previously, that contains all those things for doing the hashtag load stuff to get a single exe with all the assets embedded. So I have a separate tiny program that makes an Odin file before it compiles the game itself. So sort of like the less fancy version of metaprogramming almost. So it runs the asset builder, and then it builds the game. Or if the game is running, it builds the game, because I have hot reload. So I don't want it to try to build the main program that does the hot reloading. If the game is already running, this one, then I just build the game. If not, then it builds the game and then builds the main thing. And so that's what the build command does. Yeah, so that's what I do. And for debugging, I've just the last few weeks I've started using rad. I don't know why I opened the start menu. I've started using the rad debugger. It just came out. I will put a link in the chat. Rad debugger. What's so great about the rad debugger is that it's super fast. It's made by Rad Game Tools, nowadays owned by Epic Games. But what's so great about it is that I use code hot reloading. Yeah, so it's a program that's running. So only when I develop the game. But when I'm developing a game, I have a main exe, and the whole game is inside a DLL, and then it can hot reload that game code. The problem is whenever you have a debugger like VS Code or Visual Studio attached, then it locks the PDB file, so when you try to build, it doesn't work, because the debugger has locked the PDB file, so you can't have the debugger and hot reload at the same time. But the rad debugger, it seems to have its own PDB-ish format or something. I don't know exactly what it does, but it seems like it just detects that, the PDB for the thing we're currently running has changed, and then it just copies it and translates it into its own format or something, which has the nice side effect that the debugging with hot reload just works. There's absolutely nothing. And it took 1 minute to download and start and set up, run my exe, and then like it's like, okay, I can hot reload while the debugger is attached. It is a bit slow. It slows down the game a bit more than other debuggers, but it's alpha software, so that's okay. That's okay. Yeah. So for anyone who's joining late, just joined, I just released this game, and I'm doing just a game dev Q&A. Like if you're wondering anything about how to make games, programming games, design games, how I made this game, or marketing, sound, pixel art, anything, then you can just ask questions in the chat and I will try to answer. So shipping was, I have submitted my game to Amaze Berlin, which is, I mean, it's a game dev conference, sort of indie game dev conference, or playful arts conference, games and playful art conference, because my game is a bit far out in some ways. I thought it would suit that place, but the thing that happened was that their submission deadline was last of January. They actually moved it but fine, that's what I knew. So I had to finish the game by last of January. That's why I had to finish the game by like last week. And I ran out of time, so I had to work so much extra time. It was just crazy. So if you look, you can watch the previous stream. It's on my channel, the release live stream. If you look at that one, I'm extremely disorganized because I'm so stressed, also because I'm releasing my first game and it's live on stream, and then things start going wrong, like my game is accidentally flagged by Windows Defender because I had done some weird stuff with how I packaged the exe or something, so I had to fix that, and then everything. So that whole experience was a bit. I'm not signing up for like submitting my game like that again, because essentially I just, people say, oh, nice thing about making game yourself, you don't have to have like publisher deadlines, and then I created my own almost worse deadline because I was like, oh, it needs to be done by this date, very arbitrary date. So it was a bit much. Tiny Big Games asks if I consider using Zig. No, I haven't. Well, I didn't consider using it. I just tried Odin because I have liked programming in C and stuff, but Odin was like a better C that just fixed. It didn't try to be too different. It just tried to fix things that usually annoy me with C. It like almost point by point fixes things that annoy me by C. But Sig, I've touched Sig a tiny bit, in the sense that I've used Sig also has a built-in C compiler, and I used that at a previous job to cross-compile to Linux, like DLLs to Linux and stuff, because I didn't want to reboot or have a separate setup for that. So I did that, and that was nice. And I look at language, it's it's in the exact same sphere as Odin. Sig and Odin are sort of Sig is a more ambitious project. It has more features, sort of. It tries to be more advanced in a way, or like it tries to be more. It tries to introduce more new fancy ideas than Odin does. Odin mostly tries to fix C, in a way. But I looked at Zig a bit, but I haven't used it much. But it looks okay. But I'm really happy with Odin so far. So I'll just probably continue using it for my next project as well. Jon asks, how do you decide, when do you decide you are done and just release? I guess there are still bugs to fix. Let's just say you don't have a deadline. Yeah. I recently watched, the Double Fine Psycho Odyssey documentary about how they make Psychonauts 2, and there is someone saying in there that a game is never done. You just have to at some point say that it's done, because you could always, there's always something that maybe like, oh, this could be slightly nicer. You can go forever. You can take the tiniest game and sit there forever and like fix things. And it's a good question. When am I done? And so, in a sense, I talked a bit before about that. I made an artificial deadline because I wanted to submit for an award show. So in that sense, that one sort of just set a date. So I just had to choose like, this is going in, this I can't have. But I think you first have to decide like, how big is the game gonna be. So you have to sort of decide on a scope of the game. And in the beginning, your game usually has that small scope, and then it grows a bit. Like you get a so-called scope creeping, because you add things, because like, oh, my game is not fun, so I'm gonna add this. What usually tends to happen after a while is that you realize that you realize, after looking at things from many different angles, you realize that all these things I added through scope creeping, or some of them, are actually not good ideas for this game in particular, and then you kind of cut them out. And slowly but surely, I think that you will start to just feel that these things I have now make a nice game. And at some point, your game will start feeling fun to yourself, and then you realize that, oh, if I just put in these sound effects and make sure that these animations that are currently missing exist, then it actually maybe someone would like to play this. And if you are fine with the scope at that point, if you have like, okay, I have the sound effects and all the animations, and you are fine with the scope, then you can sort of set a mental model for like, okay, I'm gonna just make this experience that I have there, and ship that thing. So that's like sort of what you would do when you don't have a deadline. It's a bit easier in this kind of game I have. This is a sort of a linear little adventure game. If you have a non-linear game where lots of, like, you have an RPG with side quests, you're making Skyrim or something with lots of, then it's harder, and those are some of the hardest games to make, like non-linear RPGs, because those games are always the buggiest games when they release, and I never play RPGs on release because they're always too buggy, so I wait 2 months. But yeah, there are still, in my game, there are a few bugs to fix. I tend to focus on the things, since this is a sort of a game that's supposed to have, like, it's sort of a feeling kind of game, it's sort of have this kind of good vibe about it. I tend to focus on putting in the things that reinforce that stuff, and also glitches that take you out of the feeling, like glitches of level loads and stuff. Those things I focused on. Some stuff that I can say, some stuff that I did want to put in but didn't have time, but I was like, it's fine. One thing is some sound effects are missing. I want an ambient sound. There's a waterfall in the game that you can talk to, and I want an ambient sound effect, so when you walk close to it, sort of a positional audio with like a little water pouring stuff. I actually have recorded sort of the sound for that, and also I want to have sounds for when they're talking, so with the sound effect when the letters appear from them talking is different, because it's supposed to be like watery. Didn't have time for that, but I looked at it and was like, okay, I still have the music there in the background, and is this waterfall here is the one I'm talking about, that appears on the trailers momentarily. But I just decided that, okay, I have the ship by 28th of January, so that one is not going in, but I have my Steam release coming up, and if everything, if the sounds I make for that sounds good, haha, then I'll put in that for that release. But that's something that I could live without for this one. I think it's important to fix things that brings the player out of the experience. Like what kind of, what makes them, what pulls them out of like the world you're trying to make, and try to fix those things first. And there I was also like, just before shipping, I also had to make a lot of sound effects for the game, because I started making sound effects too late. Classic game dev problem. So, you know, those added a lot to the feeling of the game. I could not have shipped with just music and no sound effects. It would have been too plain. But you just have to find a balance. And one thing that there was also some features in the game that I had like a separate button for inspecting the thing you have currently highlighted in your inventory, so you could inspect that, and that had to have a separate button. That was an extra thing to put in the tutorial, and I just ended up in late December or something. I just cut that button out because I was like, no, I will have the inventory UI. You can probably see here sometimes in the trailer, there's the inventory UI in the bottom. You can also bring up this screenshot here, this UI down here. So I have now, instead, that it says talk here, and depending on if you have your baseball bat selected, it says baseball bat. So I replaced the inspection thingy with this. When you pick up the item, the play character says what I just picked up, but then it also did this. But then I could remove a whole extra button to teach in the tutorial, and that, when I did that, my game just suddenly felt a lot more understandable. I was like, okay, slightly more fun. And then I added the sound effects and the music, then the game suddenly felt slightly more fun. And what was the third thing I did? Yeah, and then there's some secrets in the game that I don't show in any promotional, but you will notice if you play the game. When I added those, then I was like, oh, my game is fun. And then I started feeling like, okay, now the game is fun even to me. If I just make sure that the sound effects and the missing animations are in there, and there's no glitches in the transitions between the levels, I'm like, then I can ship it. So that's an extremely long answer to all that, but it's just, you know, it's a gut feeling kind of thing. But your game has to feel fun even to yourself, even though you're blind from looking at it too much. Like in November, I was almost like, maybe I should do some other project, because this project is, I'm not sure it's gonna turn out that fun, because it was too chaotic, you know, with all the different buttons I had, and the gameplay felt too weak. The gameplay of this game is still not that strong. I have instead reinforced it with that it has like a strong vibe, it's funny, and there's some secrets, and it's short and a little experience. So that's what I've tried to go for, and all those things sort of frame the gameplay to be kind of this wholesome experience. But yeah, so I was almost gonna stop working on this in November or something. I was thinking about that, because I was like, I don't know it. But then in end of December, I was like, I figured these things out, and then suddenly I got very excited about finishing and releasing the game. And then I also had set this stupid deadline for myself to ship it by end of January. So that all happened. Some more tea for my... I'm probably gonna go... So I need to go cough or something, because I've been sick. But I can just say quickly that if you have any questions about game dev or programming or making graphics, just ask anything. I have sorry. Sorry. You know, when you have been sick and you talk for a while, then your throat starts tickling, and it just suddenly you unleash the Balrog cough. I've just been watching Lord of the Rings, so now I'm saying Balrog. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. But yeah, so I just shipped this game here, like I said. If you just joined, you can buy it on itch if you want to. There's a link in the description. You can also wishlist it on Steam. There's a link for that as well. And I just here to talk about. I'm doing a Q&A session. You can ask any question about programming games, game design, production of games, marketing, shipping, how to make pixel art, and all that stuff. Hello, Jakob. So Sansen is asking, are there things or mechanics you didn't end up adding but you might use for your next game, assuming you're making another one? What's some mechanics I wanted a cat to be able to go around and sort of... So I wanted a cat to be able to go around and sort of push things off ledges, because that's a very cat thing to do. I think if you played Stray, that's sort of a funny thing you can do with Stray, push things off edges. But I didn't have a physics engine really in the game. The main thing in the game is that the player has some kind of simple physics, and then that is like homemade, but I don't have any rigid body physics or anything. So one thing that would be fun is to do maybe a similar game or something else, and maybe put in a physics engine like Box 2D or Box 2C, as there's a Box 2D author is re-implementing Box 2D in C, and that has Odin bindings. And maybe make something with slightly more physics, just because it's fun. Yeah. But like I said, this game, it was more about like the vibe. I was like, oh, you're a cat, you're going around doing these things, you go on this otherworldly adventure, and it actually, the whole game idea comes from a story, like a joke story I told someone about a cat making pancakes and surfing in the pancake batter stream and stuff. Yeah, I don't have that many strong. It's mainly the physics stuff. Will be fun to try, but I have ideas for future games already. Like I've been thinking maybe I would want to do like more of a RPG style game, you know, a top-down camera like in Zelda, the early Zelda games. But maybe you're a cat, and maybe there's not that much combat, more puzzles. Maybe it's like good vibes with all that. But that's probably not the next game, because that sounds very big. Next game I want to do something small. I might do a cat-themed puzzle game or something, like more of a you know, that's smaller than this, but maybe has more replay value. Jon says he got a few crashes in the Linux version. What can we do to help to track those down? I just released a new version of the game today, a patch. I don't know if that was the one you played or if you played the old version, because that one has fixed some crashes. Or there was crashes in the Mac and Linux build, because I tested those less than the PC build. But in general, what I've seen is that people who end up with trouble with my game have run it on some computers with some integrated GPUs and stuff, where the game has first gone all crazy and then crashed. So it'd be fun to know which kind of hardware you had and what you were doing in the game when it crashed, and yeah, sort of like that. Crash bugs. Yeah, I've had a few crash bugs on Linux, and I have not been able to reproduce them really on my end, but we'll see. You played the release day version. Yeah, it might be fixed then. But you're welcome to, you can DM me on Discord or write in the channel there what sort of, if you remember what you were doing in the game. But yeah, sorry about the crash. I always get very, it's a big feeling of failure when your game crashes. Okay, yeah, you were running towards the bird and it crashed. When it's running toward the bird, it's usually already in a sort of a conversation state. And almost all the crashes I've seen has been something related to being in dialogue. So I think there's a bug in there. I fixed one bug in there, so I hope that was what caused the crash. But I didn't have a good repro of the crash, so it's always a bit tricky. Hello, Aura Big. Let's see what your question is. So Arabig asks, after making this game, do you think I can make a 2D platformer game with Raylib using Odin, because I wanted a language that is a bit more data oriented than C++. So do you think you recommend it? Yeah, absolutely. I think you can do a 2D platformer like it. You can use Odin with Raylib, or if you want to go more low level, you can use something like Sokol to get like cross-platform closer to the Metal rendering APIs. Sokol is a lib that sort of abstracts the rendering APIs and the application stuff across platforms without doing sort of explicit things like Raylib does, which is like, Raylib has like draw texture and stuff. Sokol is still sort of like DirectX stylish. But I absolutely think you should try using Raylib and Odin to make a 2D platformer. It works very fine. And the nice thing is that you have the data-oriented stuff, so that it feels like low level, sort of like C. But then you have all these nice things in Odin, like you have procedure parameter generics, so you can have like generic procedure parameters, and you have like proper collections. I mean, like you have like dynamic collections and stuff, and just small things like you can do like vector swizzling, like in GLSL and stuff. All those kind of small things all put together, which sort of feel like more high level stuff you can do, but the language is still low level. So you don't need a second scripting language, I think. You do everything in Odin with Raylib and make a 2D platformer, and it will work super well for you. Sorry, my throat is broken. Like I said, I got sick just after shipping the game. Sat up too long in the night. Maybe I got a cold virus from somewhere. Also just before Perfect Storm. And I got sick. But now I'm quite fine. I just still a bit. When I talk for too long, I start coughing. Also, Aura Big, if you... My game comes with the full source code if you buy it on itch, with the caveat that it's not the most, since I work on it alone, it's not the most well organized source code, but you could look at it to sort of get a feeling of how a whole game using Odin and Raylib was made. Jakub Thomson asks, what are your plans for the tech of your future games? Do you want to reuse parts of your engine/editors? Do you plan to continue using Raylib? I will definitely use Odin for my next project. I think I will do one more. It depends on exactly which project it ends up being, but I think I will do one more project with Raylib, just because when you first time you use a technology, you do lots of silly things, and the second time you kind of can land. You get a running start, sort of, and you can avoid lots of the things, and you also all those things that you wanted to do differently, you can do. So if you sort of have the exact same technology stuff, you can do a bit better the second time. But I've also been thinking about, I mentioned before, the so-called libs, which I know you like, Jakob. I've been thinking about using those, maybe trying, because those libs are, it's more like programming in DirectX. So you have to implement, if you do a 2D game, you have to put a rectangle and put the texture on it and do all those things. But you have less assumptions made about how your program works. But yeah, I will probably use Raylib and Odin for my next project. And if I want to reuse any parts of my engine/editor, what I will probably do is I just have my old code on the side. I will start with a fresh project, but what I will do then, I will start with a fresh project, and then I will just look at my old code and just copy over, maybe I copy over this editor widget I made, or this code for how I manage my music thread that plays the music, things that are quite independent in my old code that I can just copy over. And that's sort of a nice thing about this, C-like languages, that things are not so, as long as you just copy the functions and the structs and just put them in there, there's not that much interdependencies, so you can sort of reuse code easily in a way. So I will just probably copy things over as I need them from this game. Yeah. But I can say about Odin in general is that, and I think I said this a bit on my release stream, was that many years ago I used to make game with C++ and SFML, and I kind of had this kind of chaotic but fun workflow where I just, I work myself and I just do stuff. And then sort of I started making game engines professionally, and I maybe got a bit lost in you need to always make everything perfect, and I almost had this idea that you need to make a general purpose game engine before you can make your cat that runs. But for this project I set aside all those ideas. I just took Odin and Raylib, and I just always programmed the most silly simple code I could do. Left key is pressed, run, play this animation, run to the left. And then I just tried to, whenever it got a bit too messy, I tried to fix it, sort of. But if you buy the game in H and you can download the source code, then you'll see that it is not it's not a project that follows a lots of it's not the most pretty code. It's not a code that you would share with a team, but it's code that I can find my way around in perfectly fine. And the style of the code hasn't been a problem for me, but it would be a problem if I work with anyone else. Because they would have trouble, so maybe sometimes finding things and figuring out exactly what did I think when I did this and stuff. But Odin has worked super well, and I used to use SFML and C++, and now Odin and Raylib sort of gave that same feeling, but with an even, I didn't have all the mess of C++, and Raylib is slightly more less C++y than SFML, so I had even more fun. And then but the problem with working in C++ before was that I always got stuck with, when I programmed a while on a game, there was always a bit too much friction in C++, so I kind of gave up on the project because adding this new gameplay feature, a bit too much extra work. So then I was like, no, let's not do that, and then I kind of gave up on the project. In Odin, things were just a tiny bit easier to do. So in Odin, it was just a tiny bit easier to be like, when I have an idea, okay, maybe I can try this gameplay feature. Then there is this like high-level sugar on top of this low-level language that makes it just a tiny bit easier. And then it somehow got fun to do these things, experiment with gameplay. Combined with that, I had hot reload. Those two things, hot reload and having Odin, made it so that I could quickly iterate on gameplay, and I would never have made a whole game myself without Odin and hot reload, I think. Or maybe I could have used Zig with hot reloading. I haven't tried Zig, but just goes to say that it does matter sort of what technology you choose. I've also tried to make games in Unity and stuff, and that's also usually fun for a while, but I always get sort of stuck on something. Jakob Thompson asks if I can't talk anymore. Jakob Thompson asks if I have any custom shaders in your game. I have one custom shader. Because the graphic style is kind of simple, so I don't have any like post-processing effects except one, and it's called a pixel filter. So when you have big pixels like this, when they move across the screen and pass sort of the actual pixel boundaries, they can start shaking on the screen. And so I have one shader that sort of fixes this, but it's a classic problem, and there is a whole blog post about it. Pixel art filtering. I will link you all this amazing blog post. So if you've ever seen games when something moves across the screen and it's sort of like wobbling a bit, then that means that they're using like chunky pixel art, but they're not applying a filter that makes sort of the how to explain this. I don't actually really know how it works, but I think it sort of snaps the pixels to a slightly bigger grid, so that those pixels won't sort of wobble back and forth between the different locations on the screen. But I'm actually not 100% sure why it happens. This article does explain, but I've forgotten exactly the theory behind it. But I have a shader like that, and that's, you know, tiny code. I have it here. Pixel filter. So this function here comes from there's lots of like free to use implementations of this kind of filter, and it's essentially a filter of the UV you're using in the shader to currently draw a texture, and it sort of floors the pixels to a pixel grid, and I think it sort of makes sure to look in the middle of a slightly bigger pixel, which is why this is sometimes called a fat pixel filter. And then it also does some extra filtering to make sure that you don't get weird things at the edges of these pixels. And that's this tiny stuff. If you just have this shader enabled when you draw stuff, like draw your textures and you move them smoothly over the screen, then it will stop them from wobbling. I could probably make quite a nice demo where I turn off this shader in the whole game and it see how much it wobbles. There is one, no text in the. This is something I want to fix for the Steam release. If you look at my game, in the intro, you can see sort of the text wobbling a bit because in the intro there's like a cloud moving and saying stuff, and the text is wobbling. That's because I haven't been able in Raylib with Raylib's text drawing to use this kind of filter on the text itself, because I can't use pre-multiplied alpha, which the filter itself requires. Anyways, that's many tiny funny details. Yeah. So, yeah. That's some stuff about making a game. Any further questions in the chat? I can fill in with some stuff here about. I had never made audio for a game. That was interesting. And initially I thought that I would need, this is like pixel art, I was like, oh, maybe I should use synthesizers a lot, you know. Because, you know, it feels like this low fidelity, like 8-bit-ish, something. But I didn't manage to use, to get any good vibe out of like my synthesizer sound. So then I started doing like these sounds where I was like poking in soil to kind of make the footsteps of the cat, and sort of I took a pen and sort of scraped in soil and stuff. This, and then because you have this kind of light jazz music in the background, and then those kind of earthy sounds went much better with that. So it's actually, don't assume that your game, just because it has pixel art style, it goes well with you know, synthetic blip-blop sounds. You can try using sampled audio also, and it worked much better in this game. Yeah. Wait. Right. Jakub Tomsu asks, what do you think was the most effective marketing for the game? Twitter, YouTube, Reddit, ... question mark. All of them are pretty okay, I think. I think since, you know, I've been doing things on YouTube so consistently that when I did the release live stream here on YouTube, then well, I would say maybe YouTube and Twitter, but I think YouTube will be able to, you know, you have a more personal connection with people, so I think YouTube will give more sort of marketing stuff over time. You know, people come in and watch stuff, and you know, there's sort of some, I think it feels like a warmer thing, because you know, you have all these people popping up in the chat all the time, and then someone else can join and be like, oh hi, what's going on here, and maybe they buy your game, who knows. Twitter is okay. The release tweet I did there did quite well. I think I got a lot of, I think the most amount of sales I've gotten on each is from the Twitter link. So if we go by that metric, then Twitter did the best. But Reddit, especially posting one of these visual subreddits, like I posted this GIF here and I posted my trailer, gathered quite a lot of gathered quite a lot of attention there as well. I also posting a bit on threads.net, it's Meta's new thing. That one actually has surprisingly amount of, I think it's a bit more of a game dev sort of, you know, bubble. Like everyone who likes your stuff is actually a game dev. There's not that much gamers, but Reddit, I think Reddit is almost the place where I get in contact with most players, and on YouTube maybe. But I think that's a good thing in the long run, because eventually there's only so many game devs in the world to buy your game. So eventually you have to, you know, sell your game to actual people, to non-game devs, and then I think Reddit might be one of the better places. But you have to look at your own game. For me, Reddit works because all the videos are nice widescreen. If you have a game where you can zoom in a lot and sort of get a big, very, you know, maybe you have this 3D game where everything is moving, then maybe you should go on TikTok and have like a vertical video stuff going on, because TikTok can be the best marketing place for your game also. But I'm a bit unsure, but going by the numbers, Twitter is done best, but I think YouTube will be the more sustainable, because you have more of a personal connection with people there. and the thing with YouTube is that when I make a new game, I can make a video like, oh, look at my new game, and then people be like, oh, interesting. It's a bit, if you get people always watching you on YouTube, then it will be easier to sort of get their attention, I think, with a video like that. But that's just theoretical. Anyways. Yeah, Jon says, I get a Twitch notification, then there's nothing there, and then I check YouTube live. I think you mean because both this stream and the one before, I accidentally start broadcasting on Twitch first. Is that what you mean? And then I always say something silly. Like this one's, I made a Twitch stream just now before this one because I had a wrong setting in the... I actually just removed that profile, so I will never live stream on Twitch again from unless I start doing multi-streaming. But I removed that silly mistake from my OBS. So it won't accidentally start streaming to Twitch anymore. Because I just made a tiny short live stream on Twitch today where I blew my nose. And then I went in and removed it. I was like, oh, I'm not online on YouTube. I'm not streaming on YouTube. Why? And then I went to Twitch. I was like, I'm streaming on Twitch. Jakob says he recently found out about the subreddit Play My Game. You can post it also. Yeah, the thing about Play My Game, I've seen it. You must have a playable free demo. Otherwise, that's part of the rules. And that's the thing about Reddit. You can't look at Reddit as one sort of like, oh, I'm gonna post on Reddit. You have to know a subreddit and like, okay, on this subreddit, it's okay to post trailers of your own game, to self-promote. You can't go on the /r/gamedev subreddit and post, because that one is only for discussion of things. Then you will get banned there. So I think some subreddits that are good are, for me, is the indie gaming or indie games. I think it's indie gaming. That's the one where you can post. I'm gonna find them for you. Indie games. Is it this one? Maybe. Yeah. This subreddit, very nice for posting stuff from your game. If you're doing a pixel art game, you can always post to the pixel art subreddit. As long as you post a nice juicy GIF, you can get people interested in your pixel art game by posting there. Just make sure it's not crude. Like they like pixel art, both in pixel art and indie games. They like, it shouldn't be, your first draft. It should be, something you're actually happy with. So it's maybe better to go to close to shipping and post stuff. Those are the two main ones. I also posted in Cozy Gamers. Game devs are allowed to self-promote there. Because my game is... I've realized this sort of... It's not cozy gaming, sort of... Some of the cozy games are sort of more like farming games. But it has this sort of nice warm vibe. So people said that it's actually a good fit for those kind of things. Yeah. Yes, Jon, you can also... Jon says he needs to set up notification for YouTube Live. Another way to get notified when I go live on the live stream is you join my Discord. And on my Discord, when you join it, you get asked, do you want a notification when I go live? And what that means is that I will ping a special role on the lives I will ping a special role on that you get assigned. And you're all welcome. You're people watching, welcome to join my Discord. I think the link is it's soon in the chat. Because I realized maybe I didn't put it in this video description. There's my Discord if anyone wants to join. It's more for talking about game development. Oh, it okay, it's just being silly now. It's like first it added HTTPS and then it didn't do it. You see those two links? But yeah, you get it. But it's more of a place for talking about game dev maybe, but also if you like my games and just want to talk about cats in video games or post some cat pictures or stuff like that, you're also very welcome. Okay. So, like I said, if anyone has any more questions, just pop them in the chat. I realize maybe I have this on top chat right now, but I don't think there's a difference. If any question, you can pop them in the chat. It can be about programming, Odin programming language, designing video games. It can be about marketing video games, or just like how do you get further than while making a game for 1 month or something, you know, actually making a longer project, something, whatever you like. And if you don't know what this game is, this is my game Cat and Onion. This is a trailer that's looping here, and you can go to itch.io, or there's a link in the description of this live stream. But yeah, you can go there and click, and you can buy the game if you want to play. It's a like cozy and whimsical short cat adventure where you go around and go on a little very otherworldly adventure as a cat, as you can tell from this GIF. Also coming out on Steam, Q1 2024, something like that. There's a wishlist link also in the description of this live stream. But yeah, I guess I can give myself a question of my own there. That's always been a problem for me. How do I make a game? How do I get from, working for a few weeks or a month on a game to working for maybe half a year or a year and then shipping something? Because that's sort of many people get started and have hobby projects for a few weeks and then they get tired of it. For me, it was I've gotten quite far with many games. One thing is that for this game I set my expectations correct. I took down the scope really a lot. So I scoped the game so I can really finish it myself. So it's a short game. This game takes maybe 30 minutes to play through. If you're slow, maybe or if you take your time and enjoy the experience, maybe you can take an hour. But it's so bringing down the scope helps a lot to be able to, because otherwise if you're working alone you will after a while feel like, I'm never, like, you don't feel like you're even like 1% towards the end of it, after like a month. So if you feel like you have a lot of your game in place after a month, then you can feel like, I can actually continue working on this. And one thing that helped in this game was to set this color palette sort of limited. This is only 8 colors, which was actually Jakub Thoms's idea to get a limited color palette. I thank him for that. That was a super good way to sort of limit myself and being able to focus on, because the graphics before I chose this color palette was too messy. So that was a big thing that helped me. Another thing that I said before was that I use Odin Lang for programming, and it's just a bit more fun to program the game that way. And I think an important thing for how to make games is to focus on finding workflows that's fun for you. Don't listen to people on the internet. They're being like, you should use this engine or this programming language because that's the best, and then you will be very productive and have few memory leaks or something like that. I don't know what people say. Don't listen to any of that, because in the end, the only important thing is, the most important thing, not the only, but the most important thing is that you get something done and that you feel productive. And the best way to feel productive is by the process being fun. Because if you're not having fun and you're doing a game on your own, just you, single person, you're not having fun, you're not gonna be able to get anywhere. So you need to find, and I'm never gonna say use this language with this framework. Yes, I use Odin and Raylib here. It might not be for you. So you should try different programming languages, different engines, until you find something where you feel that this is a fun way for me to make games. Maybe after a month you realize that this technology you chose was not a fun anymore, which is what happened to me with C++. I just, it was after a month of working on projects, it was always too much friction, so I kind of gave up on projects. But if you want to become a game dev, then you're not gonna expect to ship your first little hobby project. It's gonna take a few attempts of like figuring out, okay, you know, those projects that die after a month, then you learned something. You learned that I don't like using this technology, I don't like using this language, or this game idea I had was bad. So I think that's the key thing, to have combination of via a small enough scope and using technology and tools that make it fun for you to work so you can be productive. And then when you're halfway through roughly, you will feel like my game sucks and I want to work on something else. That's when you have to be a bit like hard on yourself and be like, but you've already worked on this for 5 months. Just then you have to kind of push yourself a bit and be like, just continue. And I almost quit working on this game in November or something. But I was just like, I promised myself to, that I kind of told myself, I promised myself to keep working on this and actually ship something. So I just pushed on, and in December I did some changes to the game that made it slightly more fun. And then suddenly I added some secrets to the game that made the game feel a bit nice and cozy in a nice way. For example, that was one of the things I changed. And then suddenly the game felt fun again. So I had this kind of, the game felt very fun to work on in September, and then in November it just got very tiresome. And then in December I kind of was flailing a bit, but I kind of picked up steam a bit in December, and then just at the end of 2023 I had this sort of epiphany about like, I need to remove these 2 features and I need to add in this feature, and then I need to add these sounds and these extra animations, and then we have something we can ship. And then it got very exciting. So I think the first few months and the last 1.5 months was very fun, and then there was a part in the middle there that was like very tricky. But also I did work too much in the last 2 weeks of the project, but it was still fun, but it wasn't very healthy. So don't set too harsh deadlines on yourself. Julian Heinken says that he can relate to the C++ thing. That is same for me with Unity. Yeah, this thing with that, I guess with that the language, there's too much friction, like you work for a while on it, and then when you get to a certain point, it stops being fun, because it can be for any reason, but it just, you have to identify that point. Is it because it feels like the technology is stopping me, or is it because the game idea is not fun, or am I making excuses for some other reason? Like, you kind of have to talk a bit to yourself, or find some kind of stuffed toy or something to... Do you think it's fun to make games? No, it's holding up. This one doesn't like to make games. So we put it back on the sofa and we make games ourselves. No, I'm just being silly. But yeah, you need to ask yourself when those kind of things happen. Why am I in a slump? Is it because of the tools? Is it because of the game idea? Is it because of something else? What more fun happened when I was making this game? Making animations was quite fun, because I hadn't animated before I started making this project. So I showed in the beginning of the stream the first animation I ever made for this game, which was, I can show it again, because I had another point to make about that, I guess. And it's that when you're making a project, you can learn as you go. You don't have to feel like you have figured out all the... Here's my first iteration of the cat animation, this thing. It's not very... You can compare it to these animations over here. It's not that fancy. But you can learn as you do a project, and just, you know, when the rest of the game starts looking better than a certain part, like in this case, or maybe I felt like my trees and my grass started looking nice, but my run animation was a bit sad. Then maybe I had learned enough by making a few animations that I could just redo it. So you can just learn while doing the project. So if you're feeling like, oh, I know programming and I know pixel art and animation, but I don't know how to make sounds, so I'm not gonna make a game on my own because I don't know that part. Like, oh, but you can. If it's just one thing, like, oh, I don't know animation, I don't know sound, you can always figure out one thing. If you haven't made anything at all before, then you can also figure out stuff. But maybe your first game should not have animations, and maybe it should have simple sounds, so you can focus on just making things move on the screen. And then when you made a game where you can make things move on the screen and stuff, then you can add more advanced animations. But just make your project and realize what things don't I know and what's realistic to learn within the time frame of a project. And usually if it's just one or two areas, like in my case it was animation and sound effects, then that felt doable to me. Actually, the one thing that kind of made me realize that I could make a game myself was none of these things. It was not programming, sound, pixel art, anything. The thing that made me think that I could make a game myself was that at my previous job I was in charge of social media, doing some marketing, making trailers and stuff. So I learned to I learned to edit video and post on social media and try to figure out how to do marketing. And when I started working on this in September, the thing that made me work on this full time for a few months was that I realized that, I can actually ship a game, and when I do ship it, I don't feel that afraid that I will have no idea at all how to market it, because I felt like I learned so much at this previous job about marketing that I can apply it here. And that's the one thing that sort of gave me confidence, because if you know everything about programming and art and sound, but you don't know anything about marketing, then you can kind of get discouraged, I think, by that, like, but I'm gonna make my game, but how am I gonna make anyone know about it in the end? So that encouraged me a lot, that I felt that I could do that. So that was the thing, that was sort of that, and I've also said previously that it was fun to work in Odin with hot reload to iterate on the gameplay code. That was sort of the technical reasons, but one of the more production reasons was that I was like, I can probably try to do some marketing for this. And if you don't know any marketing at all, then you can just start post. Don't just spam anything, but just post fun things about your game and try to see what people like, and try to figure out different ways to formulate yourself on Twitter and Reddit and YouTube, and try to do more of what works and less of what doesn't. And if you start doing that quite early in your project, and when you're at the end, when you need to ship, then you have a good feeling for it. If you have never done any marketing and you start trying to figure out how to talk about your game when you're just about to ship it, then you're gonna have trouble. So just, if you're making a game, you start talking about it, and try to have a bit of fake it till you make it attitude. It always helps. Like, just pretend that it's like, even if you don't feel yourself like it's gonna be a fantastic game, just pretend that you do, because that's the whole fake it till you make it attitude. You can, and that's not being deceptive. It's just having confidence in your own stuff, really. But so I think just post about your game as if it's as if you were. Imagine you've been assigned to do marketing on a project on a real game dev company, and it's this super. You're working on Diablo 7, and everyone you're working with is super talented. And imagine you're marketing that, but you're actually marketing your own game instead. Then I think you can get some confidence in that, to kind of talk about your game in a more salesman way. Hello, Akkus Art. Welcome to my game dev Q&A stream. And Julian Heinken is asking, since you mentioned Odin, did you try Zig? Nope, I have used SIG to cross-compile to C. No, I've used SIG to cross-compile C to Linux once. I've looked at Zig a bit. It feels almost it feels a very similar space to Odin. So the thing about Odin is that it is manual memory management. It's compiled and has static typing, and it's trying also to be sort of trying to be sort of a C replacement. A more not a replacement. It's trying to be a C for the modern human being. But both Odin and Zig have almost the exact same sort of. They check all those boxes. Zig, I just looked at Zig a bit, and I think Odin's simplicity talks to me a bit more, because I like the simplicity of C. I just don't like many things about C, but Odin fixes almost categorically every single thing I don't like about C without adding things that I don't like. It doesn't add anything new, like, I don't like this thing. And I think Zig, I looked a bit at the features, and maybe it adds a bit more things where I'm not sure I like or dislike them. I just haven't tried it. So Odin feels like it just fixed the programming language, one of the programming language that I liked using the most, which is C. But it without adding things that confused me. But the thing about Odin is also, it's such a simple language that you can learn it so quickly, especially if you're coming from C. You can learn it so quickly, and then you also find these sort of high-level feeling features after a while, and then you'll be like, oh, I can be very expressive in this, but it's very quick to learn. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just something I think most people who try it many people who try it, it's not for everyone, but many people who try it just find that part about it, the simplicity combined with the low levelness and the high level sugar sprinkled on top. They find that combination very nice. Yeah. So anyways, it's a week since I released the game. I have been working on a patch. I released a patch today. If you go to my itch page, you can see the patch notes there. It's just mainly a few glitch fixes. And I also redid some of the icons for the gamepad buttons, and hopefully I fixed some crashes on Linux and Mac. Shipping on itch, I think one thing often when you ship on itch, you upload an unsigned exe. I think the best way, because then you get this kind of warning in Windows and a Mac, like, oh, you can't, you want to run this, and then people get confused where to click to run the thing. In your download instructions, just tell them to download the itch app. Itch has its own app, and when you run it from inside the app, it will not ask about this, because the itch app itself is signed. Just like Steam, you can upload an unsigned game on Steam, and then it will start without complaining. So on itch, you should just, if you try to release a game on itch, in your download instructions that you put in there, tell people to just get the itch app, because you're just gonna have less problem. And also, before you upload your Windows exe, go to virustotal.com and check if it triggers anything. You probably don't have a virus in your game, but sometimes when you use an unconventional language like Odin, some antivirus softwares, like Windows Defender even, can make a false positive, and then sometimes you just need to wiggle your exe a bit, like recompile it maybe, or you just wait a day or something, and then suddenly it's been unflagged because it's just all these false positives. Just check that before you upload it, so you don't have people downloading it and then they be like, oh, my computer says your game has a virus. It doesn't look good. Because it's not the case that your game has a virus, but it's easy to get, especially when you make game from scratch using a language like using a language like Odin, where you just compile an exe like that. It's easier to get into that trap. So recommend them to use each app and upload your thing to, I'm gonna put the link, virustotal.com. That sounds like I'm just linking a virus here now. Like, oh, this is the best one. This is the best virus right here. No, but you can upload an exe there, and it will do a meta scan of all the antivirus software, and it will say if any one of them flags your exe. Initially it flagged mine, and then it was cleared after a few hours. I don't know what. I've uploaded a build today, it was not flagged, so but it's just an indie problem. Yeah. Akusart says that Ginger Bill really struck a fine balance. Ginger Bill is the creator of Odin, and yes, Odin lang is the programming language I used to make this game. And he struck a fine balance between simplicity, low level, and sort of high level feeling features. And he is also very, whenever you ask about, can we add this feature to the language, he has usually very good reasons for most of the time why it should not be added. Most of the times, because either it's inconsistent or it makes it too complicated. And in the end, many of the features people propose, people think that it will be good, but actually, when you program for a while with the language, I'm not really missing any big features in there. But there are some times when I just got started with language, I was like, oh, maybe the language should have this, and then you recommend it, and he has like 5 different reasons for why you shouldn't have it in the language, and he's usually right. But sometimes you can just debate with him and try to make him add stuff if you feel like something is missing. But he's a really good language designer. It's quite remarkable. So there's a Kato Cat in the chat. I like saying that. Kato Cat in the chat says, just saying hi, I think your game looks cool. Hope to see more stuff in the future. Thank you. If you want to try playing it, you can buy it on itch.io, or you can wishlist it on Steam. It's coming out a bit later in the Q1, a month or two maybe. And yeah, when I'm done shipped on Steam, then I will try to start on some new game project. But I have not decided what yet. But thank you for kind words. I think I'm gonna try do like a game jam or something on my own. Like maybe spend 2 days trying one project, and then I start on another project, spend 2 days, and maybe I force myself to do 5 totally different projects for a few days each. And then at the end I try all of them. I look at all of them again and be like, maybe which one of these should I make? But the next game I make, I need to make a slightly shorter one, because well, it depends how the Steam release of this game goes. If it goes super well, maybe I can make a bigger game. But I'm trying to be realistic here and be like, not have too big expectations, so hopefully I can make I want to make a slightly smaller game than this, but it has more replay value. That's sort of the two things. Smaller than this, but more replay value, because this is sort of a linear little adventure game. So maybe like a little cat-themed puzzle game or something is what I'm having in mind right now. Maybe something with cats and trains. Does that sound? I like trains, I like cats. That was the end of the list. I can present my animals here. This is Mala. I got it at a hot pot restaurant in Singapore, because we bought hot pot for enough money or something. It's a bean. This is the long cat, bought at a random Japanese store, I think, in Singapore. And this is a weird thing that sits there. They're all welcome to join me in this stream. But they have to behave, otherwise I throw them out. Yeah. For another thing for marketing, something you should start doing early is try to cut, like edit video. And recommendations there, I think, is try DaVinci Resolve. It's a free software by Blackmagic. It's the best software I've found for editing video, and it's also free. And then you can make your trailer and your little Twitter things, and just try to get comfy with editing and stuff and doing snappy little videos in there. Because I think almost all marketing material I post online is almost always has a video or a GIF. And for GIFs also, for GIFs you can use screen to GIF. It works okay. It stutters a bit sometimes. So if you just want to record like a section of your screen as a GIF, you can use screen to GIF. This one. And this stream is currently being streamed with OBS, which is very good for recording and streaming your whole desktop or a game. It's what all the game, the streamers that do game streaming use. But you can use it to record your whole game and make gameplay videos of your game. So with those free softwares, that's all I use for almost everything. Sometimes I record in OBS to get a smooth 60 FPS video, then I edit it in DaVinci, and sometimes I use screen to GIF. Screen to GIF you can either use to get a section of your screen to output as a GIF, like this one here is made using, this is actually a GIF. But if we go to, my game is these days up on if you go to the Odin Lang website these days and go to showcase, my game is actually in the showcase nowadays. If you go in here, this one is actually a 60 FPS MP4 loop, which is what Twitter uses and Threads uses. And it's much better. This an MP4 file is always better than a GIF. They compress better and it's better quality. This one is made, I've recorded each thing with OBS, and then I edit them down to square videos, and then I put the square videos back into a new project in DaVinci. I edit them to square videos with DaVinci and put in a new project, the squares in DaVinci like this, and then I output this square video with all of them in one, and then I can use that MP4 right away. Or if I wanted a GIF, then you can use screen to GIF both to record a portion of the screen, but you can also put it into like an editor mode where you can drag in an MP4 and get all the frames and then render those as a GIF, and then you can experiment with the settings there. Screen to GIF is unfortunately only available on Windows. The other two are available on Mac and Linux, at least on Mac. I don't know, but DaVinci if it's available on Linux. Yes. If no one has any more questions, then maybe it's starting to get late. That's not how causality works at all, but yeah, so I can reiterate what I'm doing here. I released this game, Cat and Onion. You can buy it on itch. There's a link in the description of the stream. You can also wishlist it on Steam. Link for that as well. This is a trailer playing here. It's a little whimsical cat adventure game. Short game, like 30 to 40 minutes. If you have an hour over and want to play something very otherworldly and strange where you play as a cat, then it's your game. And yeah, you can buy it on itch. It's coming out maybe sometime in a month, maybe. We'll see exactly when it comes out on Steam. But on itch, you can buy it today. Yeah. Do we have any more questions? Anything about programming, pixel art, marketing, sounds, making music? Anything is fine. So thinking, Do I have any fun things I wanted to mention? I can just say also, like, for this project, I've done everything myself, but I've had very lucky to have a Discord server where I had a few playtesters. So, you know, QA is also part of making the game, so I put them in the credits, those 13 or 14 people. So I made everything in the game except I had help from playtesters to test the game. And of course, you know, how do you measure made everything yourself? Yes, I used a font that I didn't make myself, and I used programming libraries that I didn't make myself, but you know, depends on where you draw the line. It always does. But for all, how people usually measure it, I did most of it myself, but I'm very thankful for having such a nice Discord server with all these nice people that helped me test the game, and also gave feedback on like when they were confused and stuff. So that has been super. But alright, there doesn't seem to be any more questions. So with that, I think it's time to end today's little live stream. It was fun to have all of you join for this Q&A, and if you want to play the game, then there's links in the description for where to buy or wishlist it. And I will try to. I was a bit less on YouTube while I was in super crazy mode of finishing the game. I will try to do some videos, more videos on YouTube soon. I will try to do. I can do a little teaser here that what I want to do is a beginner's guide to programming video games in Odin with Raylib, and with the target audience being people who know a bit of programming. Maybe they know programming, maybe they've never used manual memory management and they never made games, but they know a bit of programming. And then I'll do videos with accompanying blog posts, I thought, about doing that, getting started with that in Odin and Raylib. So that's a little side project from making the games I was thinking about doing. Maybe it's like 4 videos or something. We'll see how much it will be. So maybe that's of interest to anyone. And because I think Odin is a great first game dev language, because it's simple enough that you can learn it, but it has all these powerful features like manual memory management and sort of just a low level programming style that gives you power, while it also has high level features that make it easy to be expressive in it. So I think people will have an easy time to learn it and also enjoy it. But what I will try to focus on in these upcoming videos is that just make a simple game, and I will assume that they've never done manual memory management, but I have this feeling that Odin is just simple enough that you can sort of sprinkle that knowledge in there a bit to sort of make people slowly a bit comfy with like just doing this, having to free the memory manually or delete or erase at some different places manually. And also show them like things like tracking allocators that you can easily have the program tell you when you didn't free your memory, because that's built into Odin, so you don't have to do a lot of extra code to get that. So I think all those things will make it so that I think it will be a good first game programming experience. So I hope I can make some videos about that, but we'll see. Maybe I change my mind and make videos about maybe I'm just gonna record cat videos and go on Instagram and never make a game again, only make cat videos. No, I'm joking. No, maybe. What do you think?
Oh no.
It's not thinking anything because it's a stuffed toy, you know. Anyways, now I'm just being silly. So thank you all for joining. And if you want to play my game, you can get it with the links in the description. And thank you all for your super nice questions and for just thank you for having such nice questions, essentially, and for your time watching this. I will see you in future videos. Bye bye.